Hey everyone, Alex here from Japanese Masters, and today we're going to cover Minna No Nihongo Lesson 5, Part 2, that is Doko e mo ikimasen deshita. Okay, let's go ahead and dive right on into this. Okay, so as you can see, we have our structure here, Doko e mo and ikimasen deshita. So the first thing, let's go ahead and translate this into English. What exactly are we trying to create here? Well, we're really trying to create something like didn't or won't go anywhere. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to take interrogatives, those words that ask questions like when, what, how, and we're trying to make them negative. And the way that you're going to do that in Japanese is by adding this little mo particle after the interrogative. So for example, if you want to say doko is the question for where. If you want to say nowhere, then you put doko mo. Now you might be wondering, why did I put anywhere here instead of nowhere? And the reason for that is in English, we can't do double negatives. However, in Japanese, double negatives are totally fine. So for example, in English, if you said didn't or won't go nowhere, that is something you'll probably hear in English. However, it's not grammatically correct, and usually it's actually said by what people consider not as intelligent people. However, I believe it's just more of a dialect thing. But in general, in English, to be just perfectly grammatically correct, you cannot use a double negative. You cannot have both parts of the sentence being negative. So you can't have this part here, won't go, attached to a negative word like nowhere. So when I translate it to English, I have to only make one of them. Another example I could do, if I wanted to actually use nowhere, would be something like, I will go nowhere today. If you notice there, when I said I will go, the go is positive, but the nowhere is negative, so now the sentence is perfectly fine. So in Japanese, totally fine to have two negatives, but when you translate into English, you gotta remember that we don't do that in our language. Let's go ahead and break this down a little bit more, and hopefully you'll understand it a little bit better. Okay, so here are a list of the common Japanese interrogatives, and they're Japanese followed by a way to make them opposite. So first we have noone. If you want to turn that into nothing, that would be nanimo. So we have what? Noone, nothing, nanimo. Just an interesting side note that if someone asks you like what's going on or what happened, and you just want to say, oh, it's nothing, you can say nandemo nai. It's just a real simple phrase, nandemo nai. Just means, oh, nothing, it was nothing. However, if you want to use it in a sentence, you would use nanimo. Next one we have is the interrogative who, that's dare in Japanese. So if you want to make that into the opposite, like the negative, you would say daremo. That is going to mean no one. And if you're curious for something like both of these, nanimo and daremo, if you want to say like something or someone, then you actually just are going to replace this mo here with ka. So it would be dareka and nanika, and that means nanika means something and dareka means someone. Okay, moving along. Now we have dore, which means which. If you add the mo to the end of it, it becomes doremo, which means none. Then we have doko, which means where. And then, as we discussed a second ago, if you have doko e mo or just doko mo, this one you can add the particle here or not. It's optional. But if you have doko e mo or doko mo, then that means nowhere. And the last one is a little bit tricky. The last one is itsu, which of course means when. And itsumo, you might have actually seen this. This means always. However, this one, more or less, whether it means always or never is dependent on the sentence. If the sentence has itsumo followed by a positive verb, then it'll be always. However, if it's followed by a negative verb, then it can be never. So if you would say something like itsumo iru, that would be something like he's always there. If you said itsumo inai, that would be like he's never there. Okay, let's go ahead and go through a couple of example sentences for this. Okay, so the first example sentence we have is, nobody has asked any questions yet. Daremo shitsumo no mada shimasen. Now the first thing I want to go over here is that this has asked any questions, that has to ask any part. If you notice, you may be thinking, why are we using shimasen here instead of something like kikimasen, which The word or the verb kiku can mean listen, but you might have also seen in any textbook that kikimasu or kikimasen can also mean to ask a question. And the reason for that is that while I was in Japan and when I was talking to a whole bunch of people, they actually said they don't use that verb very often. It's taught in textbooks, but they said especially when speaking, you don't usually actually say kikimasu or kikimasen. You normally just use shimasen or shimasu. So you just say shitsumo no shimasu, which just means to ask a question. So I just went ahead and went with the more, natural sounding one. The other one's perfectly fine, totally grammatically correct. Everyone will understand what you're saying. But this one is the more colloquial, and this is the one that people will probably actually say more often. So I just went ahead and used that one. Then we have mada, which just means still or yet. Usually when it's used with a negative verb, it means yet. And then we have, of course, shitsumon, just means question. And then we have our daremo, which is the nobody. And like I said, in English, we have to change this so it's not a double negative because we have nobody here, and that's the word I decided to use. We have to have asked in the positive form. You can't say nobody hasn't asked questions because if you really follow the grammar there, that means that everyone has asked the questions. But in Japanese, you can have the negative, and it's totally fine. So just remember that if you're translating it, that in English, double negatives, not good. Japanese, double negatives, totally fine. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next example. Okay, so the next example is, because I have a test tomorrow, I'm not going anywhere today. That's ashita testo ga aru kara, kyou doko e mo ikimasen. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is yet again, just really re-emphasizing that point, is if you notice here, I have a negative verb. I'm saying not going, so therefore this has to be positive. I didn't say nowhere, I said anywhere. However, it does more or less mean nowhere. It's just when, translate to English, got to make that double negative go away. Okay, so then let's go ahead and break this sentence down. We have ashita, which just means tomorrow in Japanese. Testo is you could also say shiken for test, but I decided to go with the katakana. They're both kind of used. We have testo, then ga aru, which just means to have a test. And then kara means because in this situation. Usually when it's connecting two sentences, it means because. Kyo, of course, means today. And then dokoemo. This means anywhere or nowhere, depending on the sentence. It is supposed to be the negative form, so it's supposed to be nowhere, but yet again, translate to English, no double negative, it becomes anywhere. And this right here is optional. It could also just be dokomo. That's perfectly fine. And then, of course, we have our verb, which is always in the negative form. Another thing I should note is that some of these interrogatives can change to a more positive one, like anywhere or something like that, if the verb here is positive. However, the structure that we're learning today is to take an interrogative plus mo and then plus a negative verb. So that way that it's always negative. So it's always nowhere, no one, nothing, something like that. So we have our mo right here followed by the negative verb. So we know that it's going to be negative. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the final example. Okay, so the final example is none of the answers were found. Kotae wa dore mo mitsukarimasen deshita. Okay, so the reason I added this sentence was just so that we could see that it can also be used with past tense. We have the masen and then deshita. And then kotae here just means answers or answer. And then doremo, of course, is the none. So the dore means which, doremo means none of the answers. And then the last little thing I want to note here is that we have mitsukarimasu or mitsukarimasen, not mitsukemasu. This is something we'll go over in a later lesson, but mitsukemasu is transitive, mitsukarimasu is intransitive, and basically what that boils down to is the action happening or is someone doing the action? So it's the difference between I opened the door and the door was opened, or the door opened. One of those, you're physically doing it. The other one, it's just happening. The one where it's just happening, the door opened, that is intransitive. If you say, I opened the door, that's transitive. So this form right here is intransitive. So you're not saying that I didn't find any of the answers. You're just saying the answers weren't found. None of the answers were found. If you want to say, I didn't find any of the answers, you would use mitsukemasen deshita. However, because of that, we're going to use mitsukarimasen deshita because we're just saying none of the answers were found. They weren't directly influenced by you. Okay, so that is the end of today's lesson. I hope this made sense. Generally, go back to here. Generally, the main takeaway you should have from today's lesson is that when you have an interrogative plus mo plus a negative verb, it's going to take whatever that interrogative is and turn it into the negative form of itself. So if you have what, that's going to reply to an object. So nani mo is going to be nothing. Daremo will be no one. Doremo will be none. Dokoemo will be nowhere. And itsumo can be never. But it can also just as easily be always. So remember that. So you're going to take interrogative plus mo plus negative verb, and that's going to give you your sentence for saying that none of this stuff actually exists, that there's no one here, that there's nothing here, none of the answers were found, or something like that. Okay, I hope this made sense. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. Until next time, guys, keep studying Japanese. All right, everyone, see ya.